everyone, and welcome to the second episode in our special series, SPI Presents Times Network Living Room Conclave, India Education Mission, Upskilling India. Reportedly, the demand for skill-up courses in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities has surged by nearly 50% in 2022 alone. And that figure is staggering. So we thought we'd take the opportunity to explore how vocationalizing education through skill development is likely to transform India into the skill capital of the world. Unfortunately, I'm joined by a highly distinguished panel of subject matter experts to help me do just that. Please allow me to introduce our guests. We have with us Mr. Narayanan Ramaswamy, National Leader, Education and Skill Development, KPMG in India. And joining him, Mr. M.S. Unikrishnan, Chief Executive Officer, IITB, Monash Research Academy, and former MD and CEO, Thermax. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. So, Mr. Ramaswamy, to kick off the conversation with you, do you believe that current education curriculum in our country needs to be revisited such that Indian youth can make the best of global opportunities in academia and industry alike?
Absolutely. I think our curriculum has been wanting this revision for a long time now. And we need to revisit this curriculum to make the best of things that are changing across the globe. Of course, we know the kind of job roles that are changing in the industry, across industries, in fact. And more importantly, India has this big opportunity to pay the workforce for the globe. And hence, some of the finer aspects of how does the workplace in some of the other countries, belong, and how do they react, and what kind of job roles themselves are changing. And in the context of a different country, there are a lot more things that we need to learn. So our curriculum needs to be revisited both on the technical content as well as in terms of how do we equip our youth in terms of taking up some of these newer job roles.
Well, fair enough. And Mr. Unikrishnan, if I could ask you to build on some of Mr. Ramaswamy's observations, and also to top that off with your take on, the theoretical and practical courses that we've seen emerge that surround coding, big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, Internet of Things, 3D printing, drones, in fact. I think we can all agree that they're taking center stage. But soft skills has long been identified as an area of much needed improvement, when it comes to Indian graduates competing on that global stage. So how can we better bridge this gap, sir?
In fact, I would say that we need to divide this problem into two. First is the early stage skill development done at a student level, and then skilling for a specific job later and upskilling in the third level. So, luckily, the government of India, after having tried multiple things through NSDC, has now created an NCVET, a National Council for Vocational Education and Training, centralizing this and understanding that you cannot wait for somebody to complete his education to skill him. So the intent of that being, at an early stage, in the school curriculum itself, at certain age and above, we may start the way it is done in the developed world, like in Germany or in Japan, where in the school itself, you get exposed to skill development when your body growth is already crossed mid-teen. So in the 8th, 9th, and 10th standard, you start exposing students to various kinds of skills. And there are people who will pass out of the school and maybe pre-college level, at the 12th level, and straight away get into a job because they are already skilled to do that. So there is no need that everybody in the country should be going through an undergrad course, which in fact, as for the NEP 20, which is just getting implemented, is a 4-year program, no more a 3-year program. So before getting into a 4-year program itself, you're already skilled to get onto a worker level job, which is a kind of job which are going to be available plenty. And apart from what you mentioned as the jobs available, the sectors which are needing this level of people, I'm talking about late teens and early 20s, are in sectors like construction. When you say construction is not a physical worker, automated construction working, the 3D printing, as you mentioned, is already getting into construction. It's the largest job creator of this country. Textile industry, e-tailing, retailing. So the areas which are delivery area today, which is everything is home delivered, not only food. People have refusing to go out and buy things, the kind of transport and mobility that we have got. So that is on one side. Second is the area that you mentioned about the newer job. That is something which is graduation and maybe even up to post-graduation level of studies, where the kind of skill and technology changes happening are unbelievable. You already have named some of them, but I would say the advent of 5G, which is just getting rolled out in the country, is going to change the entire manufacturing sector, the health sector, and many more going to be happening. So those are the areas evolving. And in the higher education, the PhD level, India needs to be doing a lot more. That is the area where I would say that what you mentioned about AI orientation, data science fundamentally, and quantum science. These are the three areas which we'll have to be focusing for the coming decade. And I'm totally in agreement with Mr. Narayan when he mentioned about that. India is going to be emerging. Nobody in the world is going to be denying India a space in the skill. And India will, thank God, I mean, we can upskill our people. Yeah, almost half our population is in the age bracket of 15 to 29. So it is really possible for our country to be acquiring the skill needed to be leading the world in every aspect, including manufacturing, services, and even technology development. Let's say that.
Well, sir, that is, of course, incredibly heartening to hear. And, coming back to you, Mr. Ramaswamy, if we examine, the National Education Policy 2020 Charter, there is a special focus on vocational education and skill development, as Sir just alluded to. So how can the integration of vocational education within our existing general education frameworks become a game changer?
Well, we need to look at this from the context of, what is vocational education as it is generally understood, and also what is vocational education from a future context. In India, for some reason, there is a little stepmotherly treatment to what is generally called as vocational education, as if that is to be taken by somebody who doesn't get into general education. That's not the case in most part of the world, and that's not the reality as well. We all know that the mainstream education, by whatever statistics that has not been producing job-ready individuals, graduates, youth in this country. What does that mean? That means we are educating our youth, but we are not preparing for particularly the job market. What vocationalization of education is going to do is exactly bridge this gap. What it's going to do is to bring on those capabilities, those skill sets that are required for someone to be job ready, for someone to be employable as a part of education. As Mr. Unikishan rightly said, some of these skills need to come on at an early stage. So we are doing vocationalization of school education. But most importantly, even those who are pursuing higher education need some of these skills so that when they get into the job market, they are ready. And when I say this is not just the hard skills, Industry 4.0 and many of those sector-based. It's not just that. It's also to do with, how do you communicate? How do you behave in the workplace? How do you manage your emotional quotient? There are a whole bunch of stuff that you need to prepare youth when they get onto the job market, because there's a bit of a shock when the youngster who spent maybe 14 plus 3 or 4 years in an environment that teaches him and that allows him to be behaving in a certain, he or she to be behaving in a certain format. And then there is this, employer and job and other things that's not kind of gelling with the kind of images that she had. And on top of it, the requirements of jobs are changing in such a rapid pace that the current employer is not able to say what is required in 2-3 years from now. So I would think national education policy rightly so recommends that the curriculum be flexible, right? So that you can kind of adopt whatever is relevant, not be stuck with something that was prepared, years back. And also to bring in those skills that are more job-oriented as a part of your regular education. The ultimate aim, in my view, is that you don't have this so, clearly segregated two streams, one called vocational education, one called regular education. It is an integrated scheme. And like Mr. Unikishan said, the NCVET talks about National Skills Qualification Framework that says for every competency, here is a level of measurement. You call it vocational, you call it regular mainstream education, I don't care, but this is your level of competency. And that, in my view, is the direction in which we are going.
It's time for a short break, but our special feature, SBI presents Times Network Living Room Conclave, India Education Mission, Upskilling India continues on the other side. So stay with us. Well, that makes for a great segue, into my next question, which is to you, Mr. Ramaswamy, because, if we consider other initiatives, for example, if you look at the Make Artificial Intelligence in India initiative or Make Artificial Intelligence Work for India initiatives, they are somewhat aspirational at this stage. So what's truly required to make that vision a reality?
Well, the good news is artificial intelligence is as much a stranger to India as much as it is to other countries. There is really nobody who is like an expert in this. Having said that, it is the what is called as use cases that is going to make a big difference to AI. In my view, we are passing through the technology phase of artificial intelligence, so we are discovering, we are inventing a whole bunch of stuff that talks about how artificial intelligence can be made. But the real, the benefit of artificial intelligence is going to come only when you start applying it to context. So in my view, what we are doing in India and what we should be expediting is how do we make artificial intelligence in the context of some of the sectors that we are interested in, right? It could be some of the service sectors, it could be manufacturing, it could be new emerging sectors. How do we make AI contextually relevant? That, in my view, is going to do the trick.
Absolutely. And, Mr. Unikrishnan, if I could have you weigh in on the same question, I welcome your sentiment and your point of view here.
Seriously, I'm sitting at the center of AI creation, that is IIT Bombay. IITs are the ones who are working at the cutting edge on AI. I need to say that it is the right time, like what Mr. Narayanan mentioned about, because without the development of technology in sensors, there is no way you would have been able to utilize artificial intelligence. So what sensors are doing is what is visible, measurable, or what the human indriyas, the senses are there is replicated using artificially created sensors today. And this will be creating so much of data. And thankfully, India is extremely good in big data analysis. So the data comes through the sensors, and the big data analysis brings out the churn out of that. And that being put to use through an artificial intelligence, which is nothing but a biomimicking of the human intelligence. And then the result, what a human being could do with the sensors after observing certain things. How will you repair a mission? How will you correct a mission? How will you change? That is done by the mission. So AI alone is not good enough. The next level is machine learning. That machine with the AI embedded onto that is become like a human being self-learning. So that is the entire combination starting from sensor to big data analysis to artificial intelligence and then getting into machine learning. That is where the entire replacement of the human activity of repetitive nature is going to be changing. It is going to make a substantial change in everything, as you mentioned about whether it's the manufacturing, whether it's going to be a BFSI, or anything in services, every industry is going to be making the change. And let me be I'm very happy to say that virtually every segment of the Indian industry, not even the biggies, even the MSMEs are also getting used to that, and everybody is wanting to climb onto the bandwagon. So the advantage for us is many of our industries are not fully automated. Since you mentioned about Industry 4.0, we have done an analysis a few years back in India about what is the readiness of Indian industry to get into Indian 4.0. Barring the automobile industry, virtually every industry in India was at that point of time at 2.0 and above, between 2 to 3. So this is really going to be helping a massive movement the next 10 to 20 year period of time in the entire of India, in every sector of it climbing onto 4.0. So what does it mean? It is going to be changing the cross-section of jobs. So the very ordinary, rudimentary job done by an unskilled, semi-skilled person will get elevated to a super skilled job. So there is a need for upskilling the existing people, which is what NSDC is all about. National Skill Development Corporation's requirement, as Narayan mentioned about, that elevating the skill level 1, 2, 3, 4 to 6th level, which is what is needed for the future of India, which is where We have made a very master plan for the country and it's under implementation. There are a lot of challenges. The biggest challenge for us is nobody in the world has ever attempted to skill so many people together. It would have been done maybe in 3 or 4 generations. We'll have to do that in a decade time. But of course, India has achieved a number of things like UPI, which nobody in the world assumed a country like India will ever make it practical. Well, I think we will achieve it. I'm very confident about it. So that's my take on the AI portion, as you asked.
Well, sir, thank you for that very candid picture where you've, I think so beautifully outlined some of the plus points along with the potential pitfalls. And if I could now come back to Mr. Ramaswamy, and I'd like to take the conversation to the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana scheme, sir, because that Vikas Yojana scheme is expected to play a particularly pivotal role in empowering the Amrit Pidi, to realize their dreams. So does this initiative have the potential, sir, to truly facilitate job creation at scale?
Well, PMKVY, or Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, is, incidentally, the world's largest skilling initiative. It's on a massive and a mammoth scale that was not even imagined before. And the next version of PMKVY is only going to be much bigger. But we should also understand, PMKVY is about short-term skill development, which is very important, but it cannot be the panacea of all else. What we should do is PMKVY should be rightfully be used in some of the reskilling, upskilling areas. And we should not substitute it for the first, L1 skiller, as we call it. If somebody youth has just passed out of 10th or 12th grade and is going to go through learning it for the first time, then you should go through the longer version of it. And coming back to PMKVY 4, what PMKVY can achieve is very similar to like what Mr. Unikrishnan mentioned about what UPI did with payments here. It can take up a whole lot of people who are now preparing themselves for a newer job role that they don't even know what is expected of the employer. And PMKVY can provide the bridge of those skill sets that are required for these job roles. These are people who are doing these jobs today. It can also help, as you know, in India, the statistics says that more than 80% of the workforce is in what is called as the unorganized sector. Now, this is a bit of a dichotomy here because such a large economy, the world's fastest growing large economy, and which is the only economy that is growing at more than 6% GDP growth. How do you think this economy can grow if like only 20% of the people are skilled? The fact is that most of the people who are doing these jobs are not recognized as skilled workforce. Now, what does this recognition do? This enhances their status and also brings up this efficiency. So PMKVY can also be used very effectively for recognizing some of the prior learnings that they've got and put them on the path for faster learning and also bring them into the formal learning agenda. So PMKVY is a fantastic opportunity for the country to be more nimble-footed in terms of identifying those areas where skilling is required, offering it to the right set of people who need this skilling, and making sure that this is always future ready. To that effect, in my view, PMKVY is going to be such an important factor to make our 6-7% GDP growth a reality.
So, well, that optimism gives us a lot to look forward to. And if I were to switch gears a bit and now bring you in, Mr. Unikrishnan, and turn your attention towards the National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme. And that scheme is, of course, expected to provide apprenticeship training to over 50 lakh youth nationwide. So how do you expect this on-the-job learning and this outside-the-classroom exposure, how do you expect it to transform the employability of next-gen India, sir?
Absolutely. If you really ask me, there's a skew always in terms of, the levels of working in the country. It can be explained that we have approximately 14 to 15 lakh students enrolling for engineering in India in a year. And which means at least maybe 75-80% of them will pass out. Means 1.2 million engineers pass out in our country every year, which is a population of some of the Western European countries. We don't need even 10% of them. We can't give them employment. Whereas the ratio between an engineer and a worker in an average industry, like in India, would be 1:20. So we need 20 times more on the technician level and on the training equivalent to be done for that. I would say that this initiative of on-the-job training that is being planned for would certainly create a lot more of awareness that employability improvement will happen. That's my first take on that. More importantly, I would deviate from the topic that you mentioned, but to come on to, larger companies already have their skill and training program, upskilling programs are there. The issues with the lower level and the very low level kind of companies, like Narayan alluded to, let me tell you, a daily wager getting into a monthly wage is the first level of upskilling needed. Even for someone from a village migrating into the city to take up the first job, to do a billing in a counter of a small shop, to maybe working for maybe a mall, to equivalent, that's the level. That is only an on-the-job training going to be happening. So that's where the first level of skilling happens. Thereafterwards, organizations will ensure that as they automate their functions, they will have internal trainings done. So the society's requirement of training, the people who are coming from rural areas into the urban or semi-urban, tier 2, tier 3 cities, is which this will particular aspect will be addressing. And I think it will really help. It's my opinion on that.
Well, thank you to all of our guests for sharing such a rich range of insightful takeaways on Upskilling India. Today, more so than ever before, upskilling the workforce has become critical for the country's economic growth and development. And your takeaways around developing employable skills, promoting digital literacy, and providing the innovative learning solutions for a future-ready next-gen workforce to succeed have been particularly valuable. With that, our special feature comes to a close, but don't forget to tune in for the next episode of SBI Presents Times Network Living Room Conclave India Education Mission. Thanks for watching.